Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. uh, All right, so part 4, looking into we're going to talk a little bit more about the temple today. And then from there, remember, if you guys are following the series, the objective is we're going to try to get through the whole book, not meaning we're going to hit every book, verse, and chapter, but we're going to hit the progression through the time of eschatology, right? So why is there a need for the covenants, for the Mashiach, for everything? What's the purpose and the point of all of these things? So we're going to see, did the Father have a plan? Did he start in the garden? And is it going to end in the garden? And if that's true, then that means between Bereshit or Genesis and Hikuluk or Chazon or Revelations is the bookends of each other, right? So one talks about the garden and tree of life. The other side talks about the garden, the tree of life. So we're going to see that at the end of the day, as Isaiah or Yeshayahu 46:10 says, the end from the beginning, right? So all we're going to do is go from the beginning. We're going to go all the way through Revelations, not today, obviously, through this whole series, and go from there. All right. Everyone knows the rules, okay? If you don't, basically, please keep your mic muted, except when asking or answering a question. Use the mic to speak. For those that are in the room, there is a feature in the room, in the online room, where you can raise your hand if you have a question. I guess that's providing if the monitors are monitoring the hands. If not, all questions must be on the topic. You have 60 seconds to ask or answer a question. If you pass 60-second window, your mic will be muted for you. But these rules are due to time and recordings of the lessons. These are live teachings, so we must give the Moreh enough time to complete the lesson. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So over here it says, looking at the Kadosh Kadashim, and we're going to see a pattern. Right now, looking at this, can anyone tell me what the pattern that you see just off these 3 pictures? Just off the picture itself. Is there anything that's a pattern to that?
A square, Moreh.
Okay, so there's a square. Which particular part you talking about is a square? You're saying all 3 are squares, or one's a square, one's a rectangle?
All 3, the way it's laid out, the perimeter, the length, the width, the height, the walls.
Okay, so what I want you all to see is the first, or the big one you see, the big box, is actually a perfect square. And then to your top right, the only part of that whole tabernacle that is a perfect square is the Kadosh Kadashim, commonly called the Holies of Holies. So in all 3, the only thing that matches a perfect square is only the Kadosh Kadashim, or the most set apart place, or commonly called the Holies of Holies. All right, so why is this going to be important? Because if the New Jerusalem comes down, this New Jerusalem is actually going to be a Kadosh Kadashim. It's not going to be the other part of the tabernacle. All right, so as we progress in this later on, we're going to see that the New Jerusalem comes down, which is the most set apart place when it comes down from Shamayim onto the earth. And then from where it is in the earth, then there's going to be a set apart place within the earth. And then from there, there's going to be the outer courts. Okay, so we'll talk about that in the future. All right, so Revelations 21:16 says, and the city lies 4 square, and the length is a large as the breadth. And has measured the city with the reed, 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height are are all equal. Okay, all the way around. A perfect square is going to be this here. It says, and he measured the walls, and they're 144,000. 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man that is of the Malach. Okay, so again, I use that for a reason. We'll talk about that in the future. All right, so everyone's good with this picture so far? Now, 1 Kings 6:20. This is the temple that Shlomo or Solomon built. And he says, and the oracles in the forepart was 20 cubits in length and 20 cubits in breadth and 20 cubits in height thereof. And he overlaid it with pure gold, and so covered the altar, which was of cedar. So the dimension of the Kodesh Kodeshim, the length, the breadth, and the height are equal, or equal measurements, meaning each one are in the form of a square. The New Jerusalem that is coming down is actually the Kodesh Kodeshim. Okay, so for this, everyone has any questions? This first part. Opening, pretty standard, pretty simple. Ken. I don't know for furlongs, but they give you miles. But the thing with furlongs and things like that state is they're measuring from an elbow to the fingertips. So that determines whose elbow and fingertip. So that's why I don't really, yeah. But I don't know what theirs is. So that's why I said I don't want to give something other than, how big this is going to be. Sure, it's going to be huge. Is it going to stick it out in some form of the atmosphere? Sure. Meaning the New Jerusalem you're talking about, right? Right. So that's a possibility, based off of the numbers that they have. They said that thing is going to reach way up there. It's supposed to be able to house between 2 to 3 million people. Okay, so that's how big the New Jerusalem would be. So I hope you only a few. Yeah. There's only a few people in there. You're gonna have plenty of room. Everybody got a mansion. Yeah. Huh? Ain't but a few. Oh yeah. You're gonna need some changing room. Okay. We'll go to the next one here. So this is color coded for those that either are using hard copies or digital. I did a slight color coding for the points that I want to pull out in this lesson. So looking at the Kodesh Kodeshim, notice the ones that it's in white, it's going to go with the one that is in white. So if it says, for example, in Yahuah, Isaiah 65:17, says, "For behold, I create new heaven and a new earth." It says, "And the former shall not be remembered, no, nor come into mind." Now, question for you guys. When it talks about the former coming to mind, what does that mean? Will you not remember what happened previously? How does that work for everybody? Well, that's what I would.
Either the former world, the former existent.
Okay, so
the sinful nature.
Okay, so when we think about people that caused you pain or suffering, will that be remembered? So the people in the past won't be remembered.
What time are we talking about? What time period are we talking about?
When between Isaiah time period, when the new heaven and new earth, and Revelation,
right.
new heaven and new earth.
At that point, I don't think the judgment's already passed.
Okay.
Right. So
all right.
That would be a time of wiping away those memories.
Okay. So what I want you to take a look at first is look at the purple. It's matching the purple in Isaiah 65:19 and 17. Keep that purple in mind, and you're going to see it again. All right. So verse 18 says, "But be you glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem," or Yerushalayim, "a rejoicing, and her people a joy." All right. So that's the King James version. So I just kind of put the Hebrew up there for those that want to see how it's translated. And technically, it will say, I didn't even put the other part on there, maybe on the other slide, but technically it has on there ki, meaning ki hineni. So ki means for, or it also means hineni means behold, or I behold. And then it has an Moreh et Yerushalayim, which literally means I am about to create, right? So here it's kind of like I created Jerusalem, but the reality is that's not what he's saying here. He's basically saying, for I am about to create Jerusalem, okay? If you walk the Hebrew out, which I'll show to you in another slide. But anyway, and rejoicing in her people is joy. And then how do you know that? The very next verse says, "And I will rejoice in Jerusalem," future tense, right? So Moreh technically is in what they call an absolute in the grammar in Hebrew, just for those that are, I guess, studying Hebrew. Moreh literally means, or in its construct is actually in a absolute tense. So it says, "And joy in my people and the voice of weeping shall be no more heard in her, nor the voice of crying. So there'll be no more weeping, will be heard, no more voice of crying. Now keep that in mind. Why? Because the former things passed away, right? It says they will be remembered no more, right? Nor come to mind. So it's not coming to mind. That means there's going to be a mind wiping thing going, right? All right. So verse 22 says, for as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, right? This is another future tense. I will make, shall remain before me, saith Yahuah. So shall your seed and your name remain. Now, I put that in red only because somehow there's a thought that once the new heavens and new earth come, there's no more Israel, or there's a spiritual Israel, or Israel's been changed or something, and it's not the seed anymore. And over here, he's letting you know, so your seed and your name remain. So not just by name, meaning, okay, I can take over the identity of Israel, but even the seed also will remain, right? So you can also follow that in Yirmiyahu, but we're not talking about that today. All right, 66 verse 23 says, and it shall come to pass that from, and listen to what it has on here. It says Kodesh. Oh, anyone wants to practice their Hebrew? Okay, all right. All right, so this says Kodesh. Oh yeah, Kodesh Behad Show. Now listen to how this breakdown is. So Kodesh, now in the King James, is translated as new moon, right? Right, this translated in the King James as new moon versus new month, okay? And the next part of it says, where it says the bed there, bed means in, okay? And then you see Kadsho. Now the vav at the end means his or it, okay? So if you put this together, basically this is saying a new month in his month, okay? Not new moon in its new moon. That wouldn't, the math of it wouldn't make any sense, let alone the grammar. But anyway, for those that use new moon there, I'm only simply sharing that there's a reason why it's set up this way. And from one Shabbat, and then look at the next word. Okay, so you see Beshabbato, right? So Beshabbato, literally, you see the bet, which means in, and then you see Shabbat, and then you see the vav at the end, which means his or it again, right? So Shabbat in its Shabbat. So it says from new moon technically to another, and it says from Shabbat to another. I'm just sharing with you what it literally says in the Hebrew there. All right. Zechariah 14:2 says, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. And the city shall be taken, and the house ruffled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to Yahuah, not day nor night, but it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. All right. So notice this is talking about an end time, but where is this happening? Right. Location.
Is this happening in the land, Moreh, or is this like happening worldwide?
Okay. This is going to be in the land. This is going to be in Jerusalem. Okay. This is right here. It's going to be Jerusalem. Why? Because he's going to be cleaning out Jerusalem, which we're going to read in just a minute. He's going to be cleaning that place out. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. You don't hurt yourself. Oh. Woo. Okay. Oh, they want me to have all the radiation. Okay, I can share some of it. All right. All right, so everyone's good with this here, right? So this place is, and I'll share a little bit of what I've already put in the slides, in future slides. Basically, the new Jerusalem that's coming down. Where's it coming down to? And it's already been told you. It's the new Jerusalem, so that means it's coming down to All right. So that means that's his area. That's his place that he's made set apart, right? That's why he said, I have to choose Jerusalem again. And when he chooses it, he's going to clean it out. And he's going to bring down the big city. And that city is going to have all kinds of stuff in it, which we'll read about later. All right. So putting these scriptures side by side, we can see a progression in their prophecy. The New Jerusalem creation. New Jerusalem is actually the tabernacle of Elohim that will be with his people. No unclean thing can be there. Right? We'll read that in the future. So when I say unclean thing, what does that mean to you all? Sin, iniquity,
No
transgression.
liars, no thieves.
Okay, no lies, no thieves. Everyone agrees, right?
Witchcrafts, stuff like that.
Okay, good. All right.
No lawbreakers.
No lawbreakers. Good. Okay, we're going to keep going. We have verse 8. Zechariah verse 8 says, and it shall be in that day, the living waters shall go out from where? Jerusalem. If you all been to Jerusalem so far, you don't see no living waters come out of nowhere in that place. Anyway, half of them towards their former sea, and half of them towards the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be. And again, if you go to Israel, you'll see they only have 2 seasons. There are 4 crops within a year, right? We see those markers. But season-wise, you hear summer, you hear winter. So you'll see that spring, the word that's utilized for spring is aviv, right? Or abib, right? And then you have your little summer, and then you have your winter, or your fall, and then your winter. And your fall and your winter are going to go together because that's the rainy season in Israel. Okay, and it rains and it rains and it rains and it rains. All right. So verse 9 says, and Yahuah shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Yahuah, and his name one. Okay. Verse 11 says, and men shall dwell in it, and there shall be no more utter destruction. But Jerusalem, or Jerusalem, shall be safely inhabited. So while it's not able to be safely inhabited, I don't suggest anyone that goes over there to want to live in Jerusalem until he cleans it out, right? Because some people are like, hey, when I'm going over to Israel, I want to go home and I want to go to Jerusalem. Not yet. Not yet. That might not be the place for you just yet. All right. Zechariah 14 verse 16 says, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations. What do you mean left? There's a battle. There's a war going on, right? He said, now those that are remaining that are left, which came against Jerusalem, shall even go up from year to year to worship the king, Yahuah of hosts, Yahuah Sibaot, and to shamar, to keep, to guard the feast of tabernacles. So we understand that the tabernacles we see a new heaven and a new earth, from Shabbat to another, as it commonly translated. Notice that Shabbat's not going nowhere and the feast is not going nowhere, right? So it behooves us to understand that this is not going anywhere. All right, then he says, and it shall be that whoso will not come up for all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King Yahuah of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. And if the family of Mitzrayim or Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith Yahuah will smite the heathen, or the Gentiles or the nations, that come not up to keep the feast of Sukkot or tabernacle. Okay, verse 20 says, in that day shall there be upon the bells of the horses, Chodesh leYahuah, set apart to Yahuah, as it says, holiness to Yahuah. And the pots in the house of Yahuah shall be like the bowls before the altar. All right. Now you saw that the water part's in blue, right? Keep that in mind. So I want to do a comparison here first. We already read about new heaven and new earth in Isaiah 65, verse 17 and 19, right? So 65, 18 here says, But be you glad and rejoice forever in which I create. For behold, I create, and then you see it, right? Ki hineni borei et Yerushalayim, right? For I am about to create and rejoice, and rejoicing what? And her people a joy. So you see the people's going to be a joy at this time, right? And then he says, 19 says, now I will rejoice in where? Okay, so I will rejoice in Jerusalem. And who else? And the joy of my people. And you remember the purple before, right? Where it says 19, it says, and the voice of weeping shall be no more heard in her, nor the voice of crying. Now, look at Revelations 21. He says, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away. And what? There was no more sea. Question, what does it mean there's no more sea?
There was no more water.
No more water? There was going to be water everywhere. So what does this mean? And there was no more sea.
No more ocean?
Okay. Okay.
No more division? Is it discussing no more living water?
Oh, no. It's going to be living water. All right. So I want you to keep that in mind. The answer is in the slide, not this one right here, but in the future.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, I know. Okay. So what I want you to see here is just keep this in mind. Highlight this in your book because you'll see that again. But it's going to be an answer to this in the slide today. It's going to be today, so no worries. Just keep that in mind. And there was no more sea. Verse 2, it says, and I, Yahuah, or John, saw the Chodesh city, New Jerusalem, come down from Elohim, out of Shamayim, or out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of Elohim is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Elohim himself shall be with them, and their Elohim. So notice new heaven, new earth in Isaiah, and then they're going to be a joy, her people, and then you come over here, Revelations 21, you notice it's repeating itself. All right, and then 4 says, he shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. So you read that before. Everyone see how they're coming together. All right, keep that in mind. So Isaiah 65:17, where it says, behold, I create a new heaven and new earth, and the former shall not be remembered no more. So you see 65:17, you see 19, you see Revelations 21:4. You see they go together. So you're not going to remember all the pain and the hurt and the sorrows and all the things that we can remember now. Okay, is everyone with me so far? Yeah. Okay. Next is 2 Peter 3:13. It says, nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for a new heaven and a new earth wherein dwells what? Righteousness. What is righteousness again? And I need an address. Don't tell me what it is if you don't have an address. Okay, so Psalms 119, 152, Isaiah Yeshayahu 51, verse 7, Devarim 6, verse 25. These are things you got to keep into memory. Okay, you got to keep all of these things into memory because righteousness is what he's looking for. And if we don't know what righteousness is, or we can't share righteousness, or can't display what righteousness is, we are the ones that are going to have the problem. Okay? All right, we'll keep going. All right, Revelation 22, verse 1. It says, and he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of Elohim and of the Lamb. So you know there's going to be water there, right? So that sea is getting a little interesting, right? All right, 22, verse 2 says, and in the midst of the streets of it, on either side of the river was tree of life. What do you mean on either side of the rivers? What does that mean? So you got a river. It says tree of life. That's a big tree, right? Tree of life. So some translations have trees of life, and some have tree of life. Okay, so we got both of those here. But my point is, I'll give you a picture just to help out a little bit, but keep this in mind. Now look what happens. Where there is a tree of life, it says, which bears 12 manners of fruit and yields her fruit every month, and the leaves of the trees were for the healing of the nation. Now, what's interesting is there's 12 months, and it's for every month. Do you hear the 13th month? Oh, okay. So that'll be another thing for a calendar in the future. My point, though, is there's only 12 months. The adding a 13th month, okay. All right, so keep that portion in mind. So everyone sees a pure river of water coming from where? From the throne of Elohim and from the Lamb, right? And then we see there's this big river, and each side of it is going to have this tree of life, and it's going to bear 12 manners of fruit, yielding her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for what purpose? The healing of Israel. Oh. 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 Not
The
just
God.
nation, but
Nations, the Goyim.
nations, plural. Okay, all right. I'm just tracking because I want to make sure I understand what's happening. Some people may not believe that if they divorce their nation and come to the Father's nation, that's possible. That is, you're supposed to be a purpose of being a nation of priests was not to yourselves, which we'll talk about future, but just keep that in mind. Now, we're going to jump down to Ezekiel 47, verse 1. It says, afterwards he brought me again unto a door of the house, and behold, waters issued out from under the threshold of the house. Where is this water coming from? From the house, from the throne, you're going to see, right? Eastward, for the forefront of the house stood towards the east, and the waters came down from the right side of the house at the south side of the altar. Verse 12. And by the river upon the banks there, this says what? On this side and on that side shall grow all trees for meat or for food, right? Then it says, whose leaves shall not fade, neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. It shall bring forth new fruit according to his months, because there, it won't, it's Kodesh, or Kodeshim, right? But so it will be according to his moons. Oh, anyway, because their waters they issued out of the sanctuary, right? So remember in Revelations, it's talking about it's coming out of the throne. Where's the throne? In the sanctuary, and we understand that the throne, sanctuary is going to be where Elohim's house is. And the fruit thereof shall be for food or for meat, and the leaves shall therefore be for what? Medicine. For medicine. Okay, does everyone see how Revelations and Ezekiel go together so far? All right, great. 22 says, and it shall come to pass that you shall divide it by lot for any inheritance unto you, and to the strangers that sojourn among you, which shall beget children among you, and they shall be unto you as born in the country among the children of Israel. They shall have an inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel. So are you saying they're going to have an inheritance too? But their inheritance is where? Among Israel. Keep that in mind. And it shall come to pass that in what tribe the stranger sojourns, there shall you give him his inheritance, saith Adonai Yahuah. All right, so we can't change how it happens. It's just how it's going to be. But the difference is they're not going to be coming with their nation mentality into the Father's nation. That's the difference. If I say, yeah, I was a Hittite or I was an Egyptian, and I see your Elohim, but I still want Hotep. You want a whole what? Whole step. I mean, you want to go a different way. But if I say, hey, I'm leaving that, and I see that this is the Elohim, because remember in Egypt he had to prove who he was, he destroyed all their Elohim to prove that he is the Elohim. And so the same principle is going to happen again. That's why they left as a mixed multitude, right? All right, so we'll keep going. Before I go, any questions? I want to make sure I don't leave anything out here before I keep going. All right. So Revelation 22:14 says, blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter through the gates into the city. Okay, so again, that big old box is going to be the Chadosh Chadoshim. Okay, just keep that in mind. All right, so here's a little picture. Notice the top left first in the painting of the New Jerusalem coming down. To the right of it, obviously, it's just the shape of it. To the left, I want you to see the river, right? And then it's showing like the tree of life, if you will, on each side of the river, right? And then underneath, you see the land of this, says the millennium, Zechariah 14, which we already read, Ezekiel 47, which we just read, the layout of how it looks or how they believe it will look. Okay? All right. So the tabernacle and the temples were symbolically designed to point to the cosmic eschatological reality that Elohim's tabernacling presence, formerly limited to the Kadosh Kadoshim, was to be extended throughout the whole earth. Against this background, the Revelation 21 vision is best understood as picturing the final end-time temple that will fill the entire cosmos, which we'll talk about in the future. Isaiah 78:67 says, moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Yahuah for Joseph and chose not the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Yehudah, Mount Zion, which he loved. And listen to what it says, and he built his sanctuary like high places, like the earth, which he has established forever. So I want you to see that these patterns that are on the earth is from on high, which we're going to read in just a minute. So he's mirroring what's in heaven on earth because he's going to make the two at some point one, right? So everyone's good with this so far. All right. So later in the series, we will see how Zion will be the resting place, which is in Jerusalem. He will clean these places out and make it Kodesh, or set apart. This will be the place to learn of him, right? How do we know that? Right here in Yeshayahu, Isaiah 2 verse 3 says, and many people shall go and say, come you, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahuah, to the house of Elohim of Yaakov, and he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the Torah, the law, and the word of Yahuah from Jerusalem. Okay? So as we see this, nothing's changing, right? All right. Patterns. So we'll look at the pattern really fast where we see in Exodus or Shemot 25:8 says, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show you after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it. Okay, so again, he's letting them know the pattern that I'm giving you, I need you to make it like this. So this pattern is already coming from the Father to Moses, and then it's not enough that Moses gives them, the people, the pattern. What else do the people need? Right.
They need instructions.
They needed their ruach. Remember, when the spirit came on, I can make this. In other words, it had to be to specifications. Can't be, plus or minus this. I can do that. Let me add a couple carvings of this into here. Yeah, I know you want me to cut out a carabine, but I might want to put a dog. I want to put a little Caleb there too. No, they had to make it specifically the way it was supposed to be, right? No, pun intended. Okay. All right. Verse 30, it says, and you shall rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof, which was showed you in the mount. It has to be that way. Bamidbar, Numbers 8:4 says, and this work of the menorah was of beaten gold unto the shaft thereof, unto the flowers thereof was beaten work according unto the pattern which Yahuah had showed Moshe Moses, so he made the menorah. I'll just say this. So in the temple, the way that it was Solomon's temple was made, it was made with the tapestry of the garden inside of it. Okay, we'll read that next week maybe. So anyway, you'll see things about flowers and bowls and all kinds of stuff. All of that was actually stuff that was in the garden. He made it actually inside. Solomon made it in his tabernacle. All right. Hebrews 8:5 says, who serves unto the example and shadow of heavenly things? So we're now understanding these are heavenly things. As Moses was admonished of Elohim when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, says he, that you make all things according to the pattern showed to you in the mount. So again, remember, these are shadows of heavenly things that was given to him, right? Then he says in verse 24, for Mashiach is not entered into the Chodesh places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into Shamayim or heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of Elohim for us. Okay. First Chronicles 28:11, or yeah, I'll do this one. Okay, so when David gave to Solomon or Shlomo his son the pattern of the porch and of the houses thereof and of the treasures thereof and of the upper chambers thereof and of the inner plurus or the inner chambers thereof and of the place of the mercy seat and the pattern of all that he had by the Spirit and of the courts of the house of Yahuah and of all the chambers round about of the treasures of the house of Elohim and of the treasures of the dedicated things. 19 says, and it says, all of this said Yahuah made me understand in writing by his hand upon me, even all the works of this pattern. So you can imagine, like when Mashiach says, I go away to prepare a place for my father's meeting place, so you can see that inside that big dome, if you will, or not dome, but that box, right? There's mansions, there's all kinds of stuff that's in there. Okay, and we have a small version of it first with Moses, then with Solomon, then you have after Ezra and Nehemiah, and now in the third temple, which is the Ezekiel temple, and which is going to be kind of in parallel with Revelation chapter 21 and 22. You're going to see how that comes together. Okay, all right. Verse 19. All this says David made me understand in writing by his hand upon me, even all the works of this pattern. And David said to Shlomo Solomon, his son, be strong and of good courage, and do it. Fear not, nor be dismayed, for Yahuah Elohim, even my Elohim, will be with you. He will not fail you, nor forsake you, until you have finished all the works of the service of the house of Yahuah. Okay, so comparing, Shemot 25:9 and verse 40 with 1 Chronicles 20:19, which says that both the plan of the tabernacle and the temple came from Elohim. Okay, any questions? Okay, great. Color coding. All right, so 2 Chronicles 6:2. He says, but I have built a house of habitation for you and a place for your dwelling forever. Targums, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Targums or not. So Targums, just my brief talk about Targums. Targums are documents that were read alongside the Tanakh, okay? And they roughly range between 2nd century CE to about the 7th century CE, or commonly called AD, right? It's before the Masoretic text comes on the scene. When I say Masoretic text, everyone know what I mean by that? Meaning the book that you're using now, that you're opening up, your King James or ESV or whatever you're using, that Tanakh portion, that Old Testament as it's commonly called, is by the Masoretic text. That came about the 8th, 9th century, right? So again, this is before that time period. right, so that's just my fast version of that. But anyway, Targum says the same thing here, similar, but it says, yes, I have built a sanctuary house before you, a place prepared as a residence for your Shekinah. Anyone know what Shekinah means? His esteem, right? His presence, his kabod, if you will, right? And corresponding to the throne of the house where you dwell, which is forever in the heavens. Okay, so you're going to see what's coming down is going to be his Shekinah, right? All right, so let us start in the Kadosh Kadashim and work our way backwards, if you will. We're not going to go over all of it backwards, but just really dealing with the most set apart place for right now. And then a little bit of the garments of the priests. And then next week, I'm thinking I'll tie in how it will look like as a nation of priests. All right. All right. So I'll do that next week. So Revelations 4:6 says, and before the throne, there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. And in the midst of the throne and around about the throne was 4 living beings. I know King James has 4 living creatures or beasts in some translations. Okay. Living beings was like a lion, and the second living being is like a calf, and the third living being had a face as a man, and the fourth living being was like a flying eagle. Verse 8 says, and the 4 living beings had each of them 6 wings about him, and they were full of eyes within, and they rest not day and night, saying, Kadosh, 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 Yahuah El Shaddai, which was and is to come. And when those beasts or living beings give esteem and honor and thanks to him that sat on the throne, who lives forever and ever. Parallel that with Isaiah 6:1. It says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also Yahuah sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Anyone know what that looks like? You had that vision? Okay. I see if I can. Okay. Well, I'm gonna give you a picture of what it might look like. It's just a picture. Okay. All right. I know some of these sisters want trains. No. Okay. All right. Verse 2 and 3. It says, above it stood the seraphims, each one having
6 wings.
6 wings. So just like in Revelations 4:8, these living beings having 6 wings, these seraphims are having 6 wings, which 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he did fly. Okay, and one cried unto another and said, Kadosh, 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 Yahuah Sibaot. The whole earth is full of his esteem.
Yahuah Sabaoth.
Okay, so everyone sees this, right? So you see a pattern. Does everyone see a pattern between Revelations and Isaiah so far? All right. So this is just a picture, right? The very top one, you see the seraphims, one covering his face, one covering his butt side, the other one flying, and then the train, or that coming all the way down from off that throne. Okay, could you imagine that, seeing something like that? What's that? The seraphims? That's his esteem. Remember, it says he saw. So think about his esteem is something that can't be, so to speak, grasped naturally. It had to be something seen in a vision, right? Mm-hmm. But we'll see more of this later on. But I'll go back just so we can see where it says. You remember it says in 1, it says in the king Isaiah, he said, I saw Yahuah sitting upon the throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple, right? All right, so that's his train coming down and filling the temple. All right, but we'll keep going. I'm on a time limit. All right. 1 Kings 6:23. Again, this is talking about the temple. So it says, and within the oracle, he made 2 cherubim of olive tree, each 10 cubit high. And 5 cubit was the one wing of the cherub, or the of the cherub, or cherub as it says in King James, and 5 cubits of the wing of the cherub, and the uttermost part of one wing unto the uttermost part of the other were 10 cubits. And the other cherub, or the cherub, was 10 cubits both. The cherubim, or the cherubims, were of one measure and one size. The height of one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was it of the other cherub. And he set the cherubim, or the cherubims, within the inner house, and they stretched forth the wings of the cherubim, so that the wing of the one touched the one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall, and their wings touch one another in the midst of the house. And he overlaid the cherubim with gold. Now, why such a detail like that?
Touching the walls,
Mhm.
touching each other.
So
Is
you all,
it for sanctification? Was he sanctifying it for?
well, the overlay is let you know they're purified beings. But is it something that he rides? Is it something that he rides? Does he ride on the cherubims? Has anyone read that before I even? Right, he said, I ride on the cherubs or the cherubim, right? Right. Psalms talks about it. All right. So we'll keep going. Well, it's
Slamming in the back of summertime.
oh yeah, it's something to see. 2 Kings 19:15 says, and Hezekiah prayed before Yahuah and said, "Oh, Yahuah Elohi of Israel, which dwells between the cherubims, or the cherubims, you are the Elohim, even you alone. Of all the kingdoms of the earth, you have made heaven and earth." And the leader David arose and went with all the people that were with him from Baal of Yehudah to bring up from there the ark of Elohim, whose name is called by the name of Yahuah of hosts, or Yahuah Sibaot, that dwells between the cherubims. So where does he dwell?
Between the cherubims.
So if he dwells between the cherubims, then you can picture the mercy seat, right? And you see the cherubims, and you see him above it, right? All right. Give ear, O shepherds of Israel, or Yisrael, you that led Yahuseph like a flock, you that dwell between the cherubims, shine forth. All right. So I want you to picture, like, in this place, this most set apart place, how his presence was so strong, which we read that, people the high priest couldn't even be in there, right? It was not possible for him to even be in that place, right? So Leviticus 16:13 says, he shall put the incense upon the fire before Yahuah, that the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is upon the witness, that he die not. Now, why is this important? So when the presence of Yahuah fills the mercy seat, no human can be in it. His presence cannot be looked upon. The footstool is where the ark is, right? The earth is also called his footstool. The next layer, if you will, is the smoke or clouds, the fire and lightning. This would represent the second level when I'll talk about these levels in detail, meaning that the skies, the last level, is the most set apart place where only he and certain beings dwell. So I'll say more on this later, but let me just kind of share with you what I'm sharing here. Basically, this is going to be a picture of how the world is set up. All right. So meaning that if I look at the smoke and the clouds, imagine that level is like the smoke and the clouds that we see today in the heavens, right? But notice he don't want you to see his place, because he's in a place where he don't want you to be making any images of him. So the most you're going to see is this part of him, right? And then when we talk about, I said fire and lightning, because meaning all of that's in the heavens. The footstool is the earth. Everyone agrees. So that's going to be like the outer courts when we start talking about the tabernacle. We put those things together. And I won't spoil it. There's more to it. All right. So First Chronicles 28:2 says, Then the widow David, the king, stood up upon his feet and said, Hear me, my brethren and my people. As for me, I had in my heart to build a house of rest for the ark of the covenant of Yahuah and for the footstool of our Elohim, and he made ready for the building. Psalms 132 says, We will go into his tabernacles. We will worship at his footstool. Arise, O Yahuah, into your rest, you and the ark of your strength. And Isaiah 66:1 says, Thus saith Yahuah, the heavens is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. Where is the house that you build unto me? And where is the place of my rest? So you're going to see the place of his rest. It'll be at Mount Zion in Jerusalem, and all that stuff is going to come to a close. Then we talk about later on Hebrews, which talks about entering to his rest, right? So it still remains a rest, right? So we'll see that in the future. All right, so any questions up to this point? All right, great.
Other than the fact that, I know it's just a picture,
Mhm.
but would there be a prison lower under the earth?
Yeah, there's if I wanted to go over like the different scripture talks about the pillars, even heavens have pillars, the earth has pillars. Then Sheol being in the heart of the earth, and there's a whole big point of all of this, but I won't get into the argument of the flat earth or the round earth and stuff. Mhm. Well, that's what they say. But I tell you, when we change, I tell you what, two things we need to understand. When we change, we definitely can ask that question. And if he has the ability, if you by some means don't make it and you go into that prison, just ask the Father you can relay a message to us so we can remember. He says when I was in Abraham's bosom, he said, Hey, can you give him a message? Yeah, can you just give him a message, tell him. He's no. But I hope we're not trying to get here. Okay. But if you are, it's not hard to get here. I hope everyone understands. It's not hard to get in a place that burns with fire. That's not a hard thing to do, right? So,
All you gotta do is keep living.
yeah, at your way, your life. All right. All right. So the jewels in the temple and on the priest. So now I'm only going to talk a little bit about what the priest wore. So it says, And you shall set in its settings of stones, even 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be sardius and topaz and carbuncle. And I started to really talk about these rows, but we're going to skip all of that. And shall be the first row. And the second row should be an emerald, a sapphire, and of diamond. And the third row of gur and agate and amethyst. And the fourth row shall be beryl and onyx and jasper. They shall be set in gold in their enclosings. And the stones shall be with the names of the children of Israel, 12 according to their names. Like the engravings of the signet, every one with his name shall they be according to the 12 tribes. Okay, so again, there's a lot just dealing with 12 that we're not going to go into, things like that. But there's a reason behind all of these numbers that's being used here. Revelation 21:18 says, And the building of the walls of it was jasper, and the city was pure gold, like unto clear glass. And the foundation of the wall of the city were garnished with all manner of precious stones. The first foundation was jasper, and second sapphire, and the third was chaldoni, and the fourth is emerald. The fifth is sardonyx, the sixth is sardis, the seventh is crystallite. Not that drink that you put in your juice. Okay. The eighth is beryl, the ninth is topaz, the 10th is sarsaparilla, the 11th is jacinth, and the 12th is amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Every several gates was of 1 pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, as it were transparent glass. All right. So question is, these stones that you see that was made for the priest, these stones that you see that's in the city, or is there a reason for these stones? Anyone know? Do they represent the
Oh,
12
precious
tribes?
stones. No, they were from the
Rep-
earth.
They represent every tribe.
Right. But I mean, like, but why did he need to have these stones represent the 12 tribes? Why? What's the point of that?
They were precious stones. They were from the earth.
When you went, I was gonna say it reminds me of Solomon's temple. But after.
Okay. So are you saying that the stones, sis, that's in Revelation, is that from the earth?
Yes.
Revelations 21, the building that Jerusalem is coming down, those stones are from the earth?
No, what I'm saying is, they're very similar. They're all the same.
Okay.
And aren't these stones from the earth? If you were like digging and excavating, wouldn't you find these stones in the earth?
Right. So you'll see that in the priest. What I was asking was, how about in Revelations? Is the stones in Revelation coming from the earth?
No. Shayaim.
Okay.
More,
So you
Moreh,
have-
can I
Huh?
offer an answer?
Say again?
May I offer an answer?
Yeah.
Sure.
60
All right, so this is what I believe. I'm not 100% sure if it's correct or not, but
Mhm.
I'm like looking back at Hasatan when he was first created. He was created with all these jewels on him as well, and was supposed to bring much joy to the Most High, and he failed tremendously. And now that we are adorned with those same jewels, we will now be the ones giving that joyous praise and love to the Most High.
Okay, that's good. We got
And,
answers.
I have
and
a question.
also, this is a pattern, right? Like
Okay.
whatever is done in Shayaim is done on the earth as like a pattern.
Right. These are all patterns, but you got to ask yourself, why is the Father using these stones for this purpose?
Well,
Why these stones?
the stones would represent the 12 tribes. And, on the ephod of the priest, he had those stones on there to represent the tribes when he went into the Father, right?
Right, that's true.
Okay.
So we understand the meaning, or we understand that each stone represents a tribe, right?
Okay.
We get that, but the question becomes, well, okay, why not use pearls and change the different pearls? In other words, why these stones? Why the stones is what I'm after. Okay, all right.
Maybe because they're
Good question.
because of the quality of the stone. The more pressure you put, the more they don't destroy easily.
Okay,
You can't
so
really
we'll
destroy
see.
them. Kananya, who has a hand raised.
Kananya, who had something?
Shalom. Does it have anything to do with the chief cornerstone being Yahushua HaMashiach?
No,
Okay, thank you.
We'll see. No problem, Aki. All right. This is Ezekiel 28, but this is the Septuagint version. Okay. Septuagint version says, and the reason why I use the Septuagint version is because their stones mimics the actual stones in the Brit Kashan Revelations. Okay. So anyway, it says, you have in the delight of the paradise or the Garden of Eden of Elohim, you have bound upon you every precious stone, the sardis and the topaz and the emeralds and the carbuncle, sapphire. You see, remember, all of these are the same one. My question to you guys is, now in the Masoretic text though, this is who?
This is the king of, or Lucifer, or the morning star.
Okay, so this is the
Hasatan.
Hashatan, anointed cherub. This is what we have, right? All right. So I'm going to keep reading this here. Look at verse 14. This is from the day that you was created, you was with the cherub. Okay. I set you on the Chodesh mountain of Elohim. You was in the midst of the stones of fire. So I put notice that paradise, the Garden of Eden, the priests, and I put remember Israel was to be a nation of priests. We'll really get into that. And the New Jerusalem is to have all the jewels. And I put why. But what I want you to see here is, according to the Septuagint, they were stating that the anointed cherub wasn't the one that had stones on him. It was Adam that had it. You catch it now. It was Adam that was operating as a priest, and had all of these lights and stuff on him. All right. So that's why he says on here, I bound every precious stone, sardis, topaz, carbuncle, jasper, silver, gold, and ligure, agate, amethyst, chrysolite, beryl, onyx, and have filled your treasures and your storehouse in you with gold. And then it says, from the day that you was created, you was with the cherub, not it was the cherub. Mm-hmm. Right. So my main point here, though, is just to say that in the garden, they had all of these stones. This is my point of sharing this part, is that it had these stones in the garden, has these stones outside the garden. Okay, is everyone with me so far? All right. So, of course, I say why? Why are these stones so important? So, let us add 3 more passages, then I'll do the answer. Okay? All right. So, Revelations 4:2 says, and immediately I was in the spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, or Shemaim, and one sat on the throne. And he that sat was to look upon like jasper and as sardine stones, and there was a rainbow round about the throne, in sight like unto an emerald. Okay? Okay. You're starting to see that these stones there's a purpose behind them if you keep reading this. So 21 verse 10 says, and he carried me away in the spirit and the Ruach to great and high mountain, and showed me the great city, the Chodesh Jerusalem, descending out of Shemaim, or heaven, from Elohim, having the esteem of Elohim, and her lights was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. Okay, 24. 10 was what they saw at when they got married. And they saw the Elohim of Israel, and there was under his feet, as it were, paved works of sapphire stone, and as it were, the body of heaven in its clearness. Okay, Ezekiel 1:26 says, and above the firmament that was over the heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of sapphire stone, as upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of man upon it. And then Ezekiel 10:1 says, and then I looked, and behold, in the firmament that was above the head of the cherubim, there appeared over them, as it were, a sapphire stone, as the appearance of the likeness of a throne. Is anyone with me so far? All right, so these stones are very important, and these stones is representing what it would look like, these colored stones in Shemaim, right? But here's what I want you to see. All right, so in the temple, imagine I put the jewels and his light / fire would bounce off the precious stones, and the jewels creating a rainbow-like appearance all around him. If we were wearing these jewels, his presence would reflect off of us into the world. So imagine in the garden, he's nothing but light, right? So in all of these jewels, his radiance is just bouncing off of everything. And then he got this, if we want to use the King James Version, the anointed cherub having all of these stones, and it's just bouncing. Now he's radiant because all of the Father's light and presence is just, so now he's getting beside himself because of how he sees himself. But my point is, then he says, okay, that same thing that I gave, if we want to use the anointed cherub, or if we want to use Adam, my point is not going to change from either one. If they got beside themselves, the bottom line is, he says, okay, I'm going to mimic that outside the garden. Now I'm going to have Israel have these things, and then it's going to light up on Israel, a miniature version of the garden. Is everyone with me so far? All right. So now, if you see these lights, the different colors of these stones bouncing, it creates this rainbow-like color, right? Especially if the throne is with emerald. If you guys know how the sequences of light hits different stones, all right? So it creates this aura, if you will. And next thing you know, could you imagine this? And if he had a nation of priests, and everybody as a nation, if Israel as a nation of priests had these things, and they went throughout the whole earth, could you imagine this whole earth illuminating with his presence? Right? All right, but it didn't happen. All right. So Isaiah 60, verse 2, it says, for behold, the darkness shall come over the earth, gross darkness. The people But Yahuah shall arise upon you, and his esteem shall be seen upon you. And the Gentiles shall come to your light, and the kings to the brightness of your rising. Lift up your eyes round about and see all they gather themselves together. They come to you. Your sons shall come from afar, and your daughters shall be nursed at your side. Then you shall see and flow together, and your heart shall fear and be enlarged. Listen, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto you. What do you mean there'll be no more sea? Did you remember I asked you guys, there's no more sea? Why is there no more sea?
Because the abundance of the sea is going to be converted into you.
Okay.
See,
Everyone,
the people.
all right. So it says, and the forces of the Gentiles shall come unto you. Are they considered the sea that is being converted unto you? Therefore, there will be no more sea. Right? All right, great. Verse 11. Therefore, your gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day or night. Then men may bring unto you the forces of the Gentiles, and their kings be brought. The sun shall be no more your light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto you, but Yahuah shall be unto you an everlasting light, and your Elohim, your, Tiferet. Now, I'll talk about the word Tiferet technically. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But notice when they come into you at this time, imagine a time, there's no more sun, there's no more moon, there's no more need for that. He got his people, they all are in a set of, let's say, illuminating, if you will, and they're bouncing off of the Father's radiance. Let's just picture that for right now. This word here, does anyone know what that word means in the English? All right, so it's translated as beauty, but it's also the translation for turban. Okay, so again, yeah, it's a covering, it's a turban, and he's going to be the covering light. So it's just translated beauty in some places, translated as turban in other places. All right, so my point though is that when this time comes, they're going to be, the whole objective in the end time prophecy is for them to come to his people. If they don't, then there's a problem for those nations, those Gentiles that do not come to see his people. Is everyone with me so far? All right. 26:12 says, and I will walk among you and will be your Elohim, and you shall be my people. Deuteronomy 23:14. For Yahuah your Elohim walks in the midst of you, of your camp, to deliver you and to give up your enemies before you. Therefore shall your camp be Chodesh, or set apart, that he see no unclean thing where? In you, no unclean thing in you, and turn away from you. So what's going to turn him away is what? Your unclean ways, right? Then, of course, we see in the garden, and they heard the voice of Yahuah Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his Isha, his wife, hid themselves from the presence of Yahuah Elohim against the trees of the garden. All right, so what do you mean by walk? So number one, I just put this, from a Semitic standpoint, all the different ones, Akkadian, I was going to go through Ugaritic, but all of them are the same definition. Has both concrete and a special meaning of the metaphorical meaning of the sense of to live or behave or act. It means to a divine protection. So in other words, when he walks with you, he's protecting you, he's with you. But if you have unclean ways, how can he walk with you in your unclean ways? Okay, is everyone with me so far? All right. Deuteronomy 5:33 says, you walk in all the way which Yahuah your Elohim has commanded you, that you may live, and that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which you shall have possessed. So again, you got to understand why he's doing this. And then number 3, Yahuah wants to walk and dwell with his people. We have to desire this for ourselves. At the end of the day, it sounds great in the scripture. The scriptures can be so exciting. It can even let you shed a tear 1 or 2 times. But if your life hasn't changed, it's just that. It's a moment thing. Okay? All right. So Okay, Saraka had a question.
Yes, Moreh. So would you say that the Gentiles that will be walking among will have to be righteous also? Will they be?
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. They have to. They have to walk in righteousness. Remember, it says one Torah for stranger, right? Or native born, and it would be as or like native born. Meaning they're not native born. They'll be key. The Hebrew word there is with a kaf there is key, means like or as the native born, because they will have to do these things. There's only one law for them. So they can't walk around. Remember, this is all about righteousness. So they would have to walk in righteousness.
So
Okay. All right. Starting from the beginning. So how to prepare ourselves to be a nation of priests. Again, we'll get into this more next week, but I just want to share something with you guys and some interesting things about what it says in the Targums, and then we'll shut it down. Okay. All right. So Genesis 2:5 says, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for Yahuah Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. Okay. And then 2:15 it says, and Yahuah Elohim took the man and put him into the garden, and Adam dressed it and to keep it. So the word dress, toil, is word for someone that serves or servant, which we'll go over in a minute. And then the word for keep is, shamar, which means to keep or guard, but we'll see that now. So notice it says that the word abad means to work, to serve. So put they were to serve Yahuah and his will. To be a priest, you got to be a servant, right? To do anything with the Father, you have to serve him, period, right? Next part is shamar, right? To keep, guard, to observe, give heed. So keep and guarding what is sacred to him, this people, including yourselves. Meaning, what's sacred to the Father is you, those that keep his laws, statutes, and commandments, and his people. So don't just stop at yourself. You got to consider others, right? Because he's always talking about this unity, this oneness. I pray that they be one as we one, as Mashiach says, right? So he's basically stating, I have to learn, first of all, how to serve, how to observe, how to guard, how to obey. If I can do that, then I can demonstrate that to the next brother or sister. And if they do that, or if they've learned it, they're sharing it with me, and we all start doing it, we can become one, right? This is the job of the priest. Notice the priests in the Levitical priesthood, notice they did nothing but serve Israel and the strangers. Remember, he said, if a stranger came with their gift, who they had to give it to? The priest. I'm telling you, this pattern is going to be over and over and over and over again, but we'll see that later. All right. Numbers 3, 7, and 8 says, and they shall keep his charge and the charge of the whole congregation before the tabernacle of the congregation to do the service of the tabernacle, and they shall keep all the instruments of the tabernacle of the congregation and the charge of the children of Israel or Israel to do the service of the tabernacle. Okay, yeah, I really want to. So we're going to see later on. They had to be spoiling it. Okay, so let me just read this really fast. First Chronicles 23:32 says, and that they should keep the charge of the tabernacle of the congregation and the charge of the Kodesh place and the charge of the sons of Aaron and Aaron, their brethren, in the service, right, of the house of Yahuah. All right, so I put on here first. Remember, he says this in Shemot, Exodus 19:5 and 6. Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a Kodesh nation. These are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Israel. So I put the priesthood before Levi. I said more on this maybe on this next. I might do it next week. But my question is, what is then the difference between the priesthood that was before the Levites? What was their job? Anyone?
Wasn't their job was still to serve the Most High?
Right. Ultimately, it's to serve the Most High. So maybe me asking you this way, what's the difference between the two then?
I don't think there was a difference. It's still about service of the Most High.
What was the question, Moreh?
What's the difference between the priesthoods? All right. So I will talk about this. I think it's next week's lesson, but I want us to take into note the Levites. They're homed into just the tabernacle. Melchizedek, for an example, or the priesthood prior, was for around the globe, around the world. They're supposed to take this out to all the nations, right? So, but because of what happened, things change, and I'll talk about how that works maybe next week. I'm shooting for next week. We'll see. Anyway, all right. I don't know. I try and get everything in as fast as I can. Moreh Lamadyahu says it's time for us to go. All right.
King, you know I ain't say that.
You're getting visions. Everyone's getting visions. It's time to go. All right. Now, listen to this. This is the Targum of Genesis that read alongside of Genesis. Now, tell me some interesting things on here. So 2:15 says, Yahuah Elohim took Adam from the mountain of worship, the place whence he had been created, and made him dwell in the Garden of Eden to labor in the law and to keep its commandments. Now, he was made where? Okay. So Adam from the mountain of worship is where he was made and then was put into the garden. I want you to keep that in mind. And then also it says to labor in it, meaning to toil, right? To dress it. It says in law and to keep commandments. Okay. All right. Targum, verse 16 says, and Yahuah Elohim commanded Adam, saying, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but listen to 17. But of the tree of which those who eat its fruit have the wisdom to distinguish good and evil. Okay? Now, we'll see more of this in just a minute, but the point is, what do you get out of it? It says, and you shall not eat, because on the day on which you eat of it, you shall incur the death penalty. What do you get out of verse 17?
That he doesn't have the wisdom to distinguish between good and evil, therefore he shouldn't eat of it.
Okay, so we see that there's a reason why they're not supposed to partake of it, period, right? So, but at those that can is because they're able to do something. They have wisdom and discernment, right? That's why. They weren't taught that yet, right? And the ones that did know these things, we'll see in just a minute. All right, so he says, and Yahuah Elohim said, it is not right that Adam should sleep alone. I will make for him a woman who will be a support alongside him. Okay?
Yes, it's not right for men.
So, if you need a woman to massage your back, you're going through some things, she's right there for you. All right. So again, we have a whole understanding of the making of a woman and her purpose, right? And obviously we know it's not to be some slave or some other stuff, but she also to have wisdom and some other things like that. So I don't want to belabor this. All right, so let's keep going. 3:1. It says, now the serpent was more skilled in evil than all the beasts of the field which Yahuah Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, is it true that Yahuah Elohim said, you shall not eat of any tree of the garden? Now, I was going to do the Aramaic of this, skilled in evil. Why it says that? Because of the word evil. It doesn't necessarily mean the evil as we're thinking in English. Right? He is very subtle in how he approached things. Very cunning, right? But anyway, he says, and the woman said to the serpent, we are allowed to eat of the fruit of other trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, Yahuah said, you shall not eat of it, and you shall not touch it, lest you die. Then, what does he say? At that moment, the serpent, Nakash in the Hebrew, Nakash spoke slander against his creator and said to the woman, you shall not die, but every craftsman hates his fellow craftsman. Interesting translation. What does that mean?
Every creator hates its creation.
It's a fellow creator.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Toda.
Right. You see, he's saying, I don't want y'all to be, he doesn't want you to be equal with him. Right. He doesn't like that. The word hate is a strong English word. Right. But there's a dislike. He don't want you to be like him. That's why he's doing this. So then he says, for it is manifested before Yahuah that on the day on which you eat of it, you shall be like the great Malachim, or messengers or angels, who are able to distinguish good from evil. They were able to distinguish good from evil. Who are able to do that? His Malachims, right? So you remember we read last week, 2 Samuel 14:17 says, and your servant thought, the word of Adonai the king will set me at rest. For Adonai the king is like the Malach of Elohim to discern, to distinguish good and evil. Yahuah your Elohim be with you. So the Targums agrees with the understanding of why not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Yes, Ken.
I remember when you did the series with the Dead Sea Scroll, and you said that they was rulers in the Garden of the Garden of Eden, and they had their own reign. So really, we're not talking about a serpent. We're talking about actually rulers within the garden.
Okay, so you're talking about Nakash?
Yeah.
All right, so Nakash is translated as serpent because of how it looks, not that it's a literal garden snake that went in there and said, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Right. Mm-hmm. All right. So, yes, I had to put all this in here. We're about to close, but I just really want to get this out. All right. So 3:6, it says, and the woman saw Samael, the Malach of death, and she was afraid. Now, before I keep going on, does anyone know anything about Samael the Malach, or the messenger, or the angel Samael? Anyone know anything about it?
Isn't that the real name of the serpent?
Right. They say that's the real name of the serpent. His name means death. It means venomous. It means poison. It means blindness. And they're saying this is the serpent that went out and did the venomous poisoning and the blinding and the killing and things like that. But it was also considered the fallen messenger because of what he's done. All right. So anyway, we'll keep going. It says, as she's afraid. So it says, she knew that the tree was good to eat, that it was a cure for the light of the eyes. What do you mean it was a cure for the light of the eyes? So the word Rapha and Merefa literally means cure, but it means healing or to make open, right? So she's basically saying, okay, so she's now starting to see that I see a cure. I need my eyes open more. All right, I need some healing, and so I can see what they see, so I can understand the good and the evil. That's what she's thinking. All right, so then it says, and at that the tree was desirable as a source of wisdom. Remember what you need? Wisdom and discernment.
Discernment.
Right? You need both of those things. And so she's believing this is how she's going to get it, but you can't get it through disobedience. Right? But she's going to think she can get it. And she took of it, the fruit, and ate, and she gave to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were enlightened, And they knew that they were naked because, listen to what it says, because they were stripped of the clothing of splendor or beauty or glory, if you will, in which they had been created. And they saw their shame, and they sewed fig leaves for themselves, and they made girdles for themselves. Remember, we talked in the Torah portion about, was Adam and Eve running around the garden butt naked? And then the father said, oh, and they ate and said, oh, what am I doing? Or we went over some places where it started talking about they were clothed in light, right? They were clothed in light and some type of light or splendor. And we're giving you some examples, like when Moses went on Mount Sinai, his face shone because he was in his presence. So could you imagine if they were in his presence on a daily basis, their whole body was just full of light. So when you disobey, you remove that light, then yeah, sure, you can see, things that you see today. Okay. Verse 8, it says, and they heard the voice of Memrah of Yahuah Elohim trolling in the garden and declined. Now, the word Memrah is basically the way of saying in Aramaic word, things like that. He's the word. So if you look at in the Targums, they're basically saying it is the word that realistically was with them in the garden at this time. All right. Strolling in the garden, the decline of the day, and Adam and his Isha, his wife, hid themselves from before Yahuah Elohim in the midst of the trees in the garden. Yahuah Elohim called to Adam and said to him, is not the whole world which I created manifest before me, the darkness as well as the light? How then do you imagine in your heart that you can hide yourself from before me? I said, do I not see the place where you are hiding? And where are the commandments that I commanded you? And he said, I heard the voice of your Memrah in the garden, and I was afraid, for I was naked, because I neglected the commandment you gave me, and I hid myself for shame. He said, who told you that you were naked? Perhaps you have eaten of the fruit of the tree from which I commanded you not to eat? And Adam said, the woman you put beside me, she gave me of the fruit of the tree, and I ate. And Yahuah Elohim said to the woman, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the serpent lured me, that with his cleverness, and led me astray in his wickedness, and I ate. Everyone's passing the buck. All right. Now, here's the next interesting part. Okay. And then we'll close. So he says, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, between the offspring of your children and the offspring of her children. And when the children of the woman keep the commandments of the law, they will take aim and strike you on your head. But when they forsake the commandments of the law, you will take aim and wound them on their heels. For them, however, there will be a remedy. But for you, there will be no remedy. And they are to make peace in the end in the days of the King Messiah. The woman, he said, I will greatly multiply your affliction, and in blood of virginity and in your pregnancies, in pain you shall bear children, yet your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you both for righteousness and for sin. 17 says, and to Adam, he said, because you listened to the word of your wife, or your Isha, and ate of the fruit of the tree concerning which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of it. Cursed be the earth, because it did not, listen, because it did not show you your guilt. Okay? By toil, you shall eat of it all the days of your life. So now, till we get out of this, what you read here.
Man, even Earth got punished because from what I read there, the Earth got punished because it did not, I guess, punish Adam. I don't know. That's weird.
Right. Okay. You are?
It's a lot more clear. This the Targum, it's a lot more clear. It's giving a lot more explanations than you would normally read in like, for example, the regular Torah. It's giving more understanding to what really is going on in the Garden of Eden. It's explaining why things are the way they are.
Okay. Yes.
It's a lot clearer.
Well, you know,
Why? How could the earth have showed him? Did not show you your guilt. How could the earth have shown him his guilt? Is it literal earth?
No. I'll say I'll answer in just a minute. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we
Woo. I'm gonna get this version, Moreh. Where can I get this version? Or book?
You got Amazon or Logos Pen in your Bible software, but you can do that or just buy the book on Amazon. It's not too bad. It's like maybe $800 and something.
Oh, geez, you're like, it's not too bad. Yeah, I'll just dig deep in my pockets and get that out. You're right.
There's 4 different Targums. Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Okay. All right. You had something?
Well, I was just looking at the fact that he already prescribed. There's no remedy for the seed of the serpents, but there's a remedy for the seed of the woman. Those are, and we're waiting that to make peace in the end in the days of the King Messiah, Mashiach, and then he rules over her in both righteousness and for sin. That's interesting.
Yeah, so he's going to rule over both for righteousness and for sin, meaning the positive and the negative. He still rules over it. So, meaning he corrects his house. Okay. Then it says, and Adam said, because because you listen to the words of your Yeshua and ate of the fruit of the tree concerning I command, saying, you shall not eat of it. Cursed be the earth, because it did not. That's how it really reads. Because it did not show you your guilt, by toil you shall do it. So in layman's terms, it's basically stating that now, because of what he did, that even the earth is going to be giving him problems. It's really what this is after. And then, as I think Shema was trying to lead up to, was you ever thought about why all the insects and the bugs and the bears and the animals don't like you anymore? This is what you did. Yeah. Every time an animal look at you, this you caused this. Yeah, right. Can't believe this. Right, I'm out here tearing people away.
So, Moreh, would you say that the creation is a witness against Adam?
Right. Yeah, it's against Adam. And that's why it says in the future that even the animals, you'll be at rest with all the animals and things like that in the future when things is restored. Would you have?
Yeah. So 2 people are asking exactly what is this Targum that you have, and Priscilla is asking exactly what is the Targum.
Okay, so the Targum, this one here is Targum Jonathan. There's Targum Uncleos, and basically these are writings that were read alongside, just like in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were read alongside to get better edification of what you're reading, so they wouldn't fall into other people's interpretation. As they were, let's just say for an example, they go into captivity. When you go into captivity, you start learning how it's hard to understand in certain things, because you're now starting to, some were going into the Greek and let's say learning Greek. I'm going to use Greek for an example. So they start to learn Greek, and they're moving away from the language, which means if it's written in a certain language and you're moving away from it, then you start putting your own information, ideology, and things like that. So what the Targums and a lot of the writings of the Dead Sea Scrolls did was they gave commentary to what was happening, that to make sure that the meaning was never lost, is what it's realistically for. So the Targums in this day, they were reading this to say that, because of the captivity that they came out of and the scattering that was happening, that they were losing the understanding of the scriptures. And slowly the language was changed. Remember, when they came out of Babylon, they took on the Aramaic style, and the Aramaic came on the scene. And then, of course, the Hebrews in Egypt were speaking the Greek language, and he birthed the Septuagint, if you will. A lot of stuff was happening to where they needed to create a commentary to try to keep the Torah understanding and the stories and what happened sound. Is basically what's happening.
So Yahuah wants to know, are these similar to the Parsha?
It's kind of similar to the Parsha, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of similar to it. It's just with the Parsha, I'm careful. I don't want to use rabbinic writing, versus something that is understood that our ancestors use. Like, for example, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they have a lot of information. Like, for example, they'll share in Dead Sea Scrolls about Sarah, right, and Abraham, and it says, it answers a question. For an example, if it was a question for anybody, why would Abraham just allow his wife to be taken by the Pharaoh, and what's going on? Why did he do that? You know what I mean? And then in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it says the reason why was because he had a dream, and in his dream that he was going to be killed. They would come against him, and so he made a deal with his Isha and said, "Hey, say that you're my sister, and so that way, when they see that I'm your brother, that they wouldn't kill me." So, in other words, it gives an understanding of what's happening more than what is being said. And mind you, again, all of these things that you're reading here and in the Dead Sea Scrolls all predate the Masoretic text that you're using now. So you open your book up right now, and you're like, I don't see this, I don't see that. But you got to understand, this that you're reading now, the Masoretic text wasn't written yet. Okay, not to say that the scriptures weren't there. What I'm getting at is the way that it's translated now was not the way that it was translated in their day. So what we have today is something that was birthed about 800 to 900 AD, called the Masoretes. All right, in Tiberia. If you look up the history, you'll see that's what we're using. So now what we're doing is that's our standard, mostly our standard today. We're all basically stating that if I don't see it in the 66 canon and the canon that we're using, as though there was no other canon prior to that, that if it doesn't meet this standard, then everything else must be a lie. But if you believe that, I'll just say, for an example, if you think about before the Mashiach, before him, what book did they have that was canon before that? So they had Jubilee, they had Enoch, they had certain books that were already in their particular canon. That's not in ours today. But then when we read in the Brit Hadashah, you hear some bits and pieces of Enoch in there, small bit of Jubilee in there. And you're like, well, where are you getting this information from? Right? So the other part is, but the disciples, normally the disciples that's during the time of Mashiach, they didn't have the same book. They were using the Septuagint, the LXX edition, which, I encourage people to go look that up and see for themselves. That's their version that they were using. They weren't using Masoretic text that we have today. So all that's just to say that there's more information that's in the older version than it is in the newer version. The newer versions, there's a lot of condensing that took place. So the making of the Dead Sea Scrolls, or the findings of the Dead Sea Scrolls, what happens with that was they started comparing it with the Masoretic text. About 75 to 80% of it is exact. The other 25% they're showing was not, and they're saying, why? What's the problem that this 25% is not matching? So the grammar, they found some grammar that was terrible in the Masoretic text, but it's perfect grammar in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the older version of it. So that's the first part. The second part, they saw that where the Masoretic text, they didn't believe in the Mashiach, versus in the Dead Sea Scrolls and all them, they believed in a Mashiach to come, right? So, but in the Masoretic text, they didn't believe that the Messiah who we say is the Messiah, they don't believe him. So because of that, they say certain things are omitted. For an example, if you look up your book of Hebrews, and it says a body was prepared for me. Everyone sees that in the book of Hebrews, right? Now, they're saying that quote comes from Psalms chapter 40, right? So when you go back to Psalms chapter 40, notice it does not say that at all. But if you go to a Septuagint, notice you'll find it. You see? So they're showing you that there are some problems with it. And then some linguistical issues dealing with the condensing of, let's say, using Yahusha versus Yeshua and some other names. But I don't want to go too much into history right now. I'm just simply sharing that to make a long story short, I'm just using things that they would have used in their day. I'm still using King James and the ESV and things like that that we're normally accustomed to. But if, for those that want to see a fuller picture, if you believe it, the point is that there's more that's happening. And not only that, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Philo and Josephus. I'm not going to go into what I would say about them, other than that the writings that we talked about so far, they go into depth about what they believed at that time, which is different than what the Masoretic says, or some parts of what the Masoretic says. So again, there's a lot of historical background to show you what the first century believers believed, and then here we got by the 8th or 7th century, there's a slight change, and from that 8th, 7th, 8th century, we got our canonized scripture that we have that we're using today, and that becomes our new standard. So I'm only just trying to help out a little bit with those things. But if the person don't want that or is not with that, that's not what I'm after. More than I'm after about a picture from the beginning to the end, right? So that's really what I wanted. Hopefully that helped out. Okay.
Hey, Moreh.
Again.
Right there in Genesis 3:16.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go back?
Mm-hmm.
Right there where it says, and it says, yet your desire should be for your husband. In the Hebrew, what does that word desire mean?
All right, so the desire means, in the Hebrew, means a longing for. So they have a longing for their ish. And so the longing, realistically, it's the same also, you'll see it translated other words as also lust, right? So it's just, I only use that only because when a person, hey, as I said, everyone in here, do you guys lust after your husband or your wife or do you guys lust after them? Right, yeah, but if I say, do you guys desire? Then everybody, oh yeah, absolutely, I desire them for sure. I don't lust after them, no.
Yes.
Well, in Hebrew, they're the same word. Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. So,
we're looking like, girl, you're looking mighty young today.
Mm-hmm. What, you looking at a picture? Oh, okay. All right. All right. So, any other questions?
Moreh, I have a question. Remember you were talking about the two types of priests, the Levitical priests, the priests that were ordained specifically to Yahuah, and then the other priests, the Levitical priests that went out more into the world. Are you going to explain more about that in a later lesson?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I put up on the screen, was that I will talk more about it when we talk about the priesthood. I'll go into a little bit more about that, sure. I won't go into in a detailed description, only because then I would like to use a lot of Hebrew. But I will be going over just so everyone can see that there was a priesthood prior to Levitical priesthood, and that priesthood was functioning, and the Mashiach is after that priesthood, for an example, or in order of that priesthood, if you will. And so therefore, do they contradict or they cancel each other out? No. So you have to say, well, what's going on? We need to figure out what's happening.
Okay. Toda.
Mm-hmm. All right, any other questions? Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So I got two questions. Hopefully it'll be within the 60 seconds or 60
yeah, 60
minute,
seconds. Hold on. Let me get the timer going. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I got 2 minutes.
Uh-huh.
All right, so you was speaking on the Targum translation. That's better than Masoretic, right?
In some degree, Masoretic is not a bad translation, but there are issues within it that the older writings would fix.
Okay, so according to Genesis chapter 3 verse 16, you was reading out the Targum, if I'm saying the right translation. Okay, the Targum translation. You was it says that the man will be responsible for the sin, the righteous and the sin. So my question is, according to Deuteronomy 24:16, will the woman still die for her own sin?
Yeah. So when it says he's ruling over her and he's talking about righteousness and for sin, it's basically in layman's terms is saying, let's say for example, you have children and your children are doing righteous things. You're responsible for your children's righteousness. If your children act bad, you're responsible for their discipline, for their sin. That's basically what it's stating. Well, I'm giving him an example. But
we were talking about the east side.
Right. Well, no, I mean, you tell Isha, listen, her righteousness is fine and her sin negative. No, you're not going to do that. But they may pout or get upset or get mad, but you can tell them, no, that's sin. That's not going to happen. And they should respect it and say, you're right. After they may need 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. I don't think they should go after a week. But my point is, they would have to say, I have to submit if they believe in the scriptures. That's the Hebrew word you'll get in the future. If, yeah, Aleph, Mem. If, all right. I'm gonna remember that Hebrew word. If, Okay, got it.
All right.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Andy would like to know, was David a priest in the order of the Melchizedek and his sons?
Okay. Well, so no, he didn't operate that way because of his hands, so to speak, his position. But if you're looking at Tehillim or Psalms 110 is what I think most people would go to in that order. But he never operated as an actual priest. Yeah, he did a lot more. But the reason why I want to go more into the priests and things, because I want you to see that, which I said I'll talk about, I think, next week, is the priesthood that the Levites are under is just a priesthood. The other priesthood is under a priest and king type priesthood. They're not the same. One is a priest, one is a king and priest, right? Like for example, the Mashiach, right? King and priest. You see in Zechariah, I think it's chapter 3, verse 1, king and priest. You read about it in the Psalms, king and priest. You read it in Revelations, king and priest. So they're not the same. Levites not going to turn into and kings. So that's why I said we'll discuss a little bit more of that a little later. All right, any other questions? All right. If all hearts and minds is good, we'll close out and fellowship. You said
Yahuah Melech Alam. Total Revival Yahuah for the word we heard today. Continue to bless our Moreh to give us more revelation, knowledge of your word, and also give us revelation and the desire to apply the word that we've heard to our lives so that we can be that set apart person, that set apart being that you will have us to be. We just ask right now, Father, that your will will be done in our lives. Our desire, Father, is to be what you will have us to be, and that is to be set apart, to be holy, to be set apart, and to be a light unto the world. And as the Moreh gets ready to bring next week about us being priests, allow us to go out into the byways and the highways and to be an example, to be a light, to share this truth to those that we're impelled to tell, to share with. I just ask now, Father, that your will would be done. Bless the hands that brought the food, that prepared the food, and just bless this fellowship. Bless us, Father, and all of those that also are getting into this Hebrew, Father. Give us more revelation, knowledge, and a desire to be students of the word so that we can be rightly divide the word of truth, so that you get all the honor and the esteem and the praise. We just thank you for those that was online, Father, There's a lot of unspoken requests. We ask, Father, that you will meet those needs in Yahushua HaMashiach's name. Father, we know that there's one of Koti having back problems. We just pray, Father, by your stripes, she's healed. And not only just her, Father, there's others that have financial needs. We ask you, Father, to meet those financial needs in Yahushua HaMashiach's name. There's others, Father, that are maybe having marital problems. Father, we ask that you come and be in the midst of that situation. Allow your peace, your restoration be in the midst of that situation. We decree and declare that you get the victory, you get the esteem. It's all about you, Father. We're here to worship, to esteem your name, because there's nobody like you, Father. You're so awesome. You're so mighty. You're so excellent. And we just thank you, Father. Thank you, Abba Yah, for opening up our eyes to your truth and your understanding of your word. Hallelujah. In Yahushua's name we pray. Amen and amen.